Hey guys, welcome to a quick video. I've had a couple requests to show you how to take apart the REPR, replace the O-ring and the little parts inside, and we'll discuss basically how it works as well. So the REPR is a transverse reg that is a high pressure regulator. It goes from 60 bar to about 270, 280 bar. It works, like I said, transverse, as opposed to a traditional regulator, which is in line. So this would be a traditional regulator, and this would sit in line. This would be your high pressure side. Air would enter through here. Your adjustment screw is usually underneath the locking screw. It would go through a series of Belleville washers, which are just basically spring washers. The tension determines how much pressure goes through the piston. This is the piston housing, and there's usually two O-rings on the piston that seal it. This kind of moves up and down, and then reduces the pressure, and that sits in your plenum. So that's a traditional regulator. This one here is a little different in that it is self-contained inside of a little cup, as I show you as I take this apart. One of the things that makes this unique is that it's self-contained in a cup, and there are two sets of springs in here. One which the piston rides on underneath the cup. There's the cup itself is sealed, and then of course the Belleville washers and piston that sit inside the transverse reg. The thing that makes this unique is not just the regulator, but it's also the valve that goes along with it. And that valve is the part that won the US patent. What makes this different is that in this system, we don't really care about plenum size anymore. As a matter of fact, a very large plenum actually will not have the valve dwell time due to the way the system is designed to even dump the plenum. This plenum itself, which is the standard size plenum, is almost never dumped entirely, and you'll see that when you guys start putting a gauge on here. You'll see that the plenum itself almost never dumps. The thing that makes this unique is that the valve opens the same amount of valve dwell time no matter what I set the pressure. So now I can use pressure as my main determiner of pellet speed, not volume. Other systems use a power plenum because the valve can get locked if I set the regulator too high. In this system, I will not experience valve lock like you would other systems. Those systems work well in that ecosystem. This one's a little bit different. So I don't need to buy anything extra, get larger plenums. There's a misnomer about how the valve works. And if you guys go on the US Patent Office and look at it, you'll begin to read the abstract. You'll understand why Ed had told you that the only difference they'd experience is about a 3% difference between them. And it has to do with how the system works. So you can think of pressure as your volts and the volume as your amperes. But in this case, it's kind of a little bit different in how the system works. So that's kind of the boring part. Let's go on to taking it apart. All right, you can use a set of snap ring pliers or Nipex pliers, if you will. These are outer ring. I found the outer ring works better because it allows me to squeeze the ring itself without slipping. So if you're going to choose a set of snap ring pliers and you don't have a tool, use outer ring pliers. You're just going to locate the two holes. Obviously this is going to be completely degassed. That goes without saying, but I do have to say that little safety message. You're going to unscrew the adjustment ring on the outside. Once I have exposed the adjustment ring on the outside, you'll see that I have the piston and Belleville washers. At this point, it's nice to have a nice little set of fishing dikes or needle nose pliers. And you're just going to grab on the inside and pull the entire piston out. What you're going to find when you pull the piston out is you're going to find a set of stack of Belleville washers. Now these go together like two little clamshells, just like a traditional regulator does. So as you can see here, it's beveled. So you're going to go bevel to bevel, kind of like two parentheses going together, or two little clams meeting. And this is going to be your spring action. So these are going to be stacked back on the piston, square by or pair by pair, excuse me. So they'll go on like this in a pair. Okay, so in your set there should be 4 pairs here. So you're going to have 1 pair, 2, 3, 4. So when you go to put them back, there should be 4 sets. They're all going to go together inside of here. Now, this is the most common O-ring that is popped. This is a 1.5 by 5. Happens to be the same size that sits on your fill probes. There's a bunch of different types of material: EDM, O-rings, silicon, Buna 70, Viton, etc., etc. We're going to use, the manual calls for Buna 70, 1.5 by 5. And remember, when we're measuring O-rings, it's ID and cross-sectional thickness. So 1.5 would be the thickness, and the ID is going to be 5 millimeters. So that's 5 by 1.5. So if I set this at 130 bar and I want to drop it to 100 bar, remember that this pressure, even if I drop it to 100 bar, it's going to still stay 130 in here. So now I have higher pressure here, lower pressure here, and I've decreased the setting. So when you go down slow. You don't have to degas it to go down. That is one thing that is unique about this system. But when you do degas it, you want to go down slow. Shoot a couple times, because as I had mentioned earlier in this video, you may or may not, depending on your jets, even dump this entire plenum each time. And this doesn't matter anymore that we don't dump the entire plenum, because we have a completely different valve system. So the schematic and the scheme and the thought process of how you tune a Leshiy 2 is completely different than any other gun. And so you may not dump this entire plenum, and you'll see it when you put a gauge on here, and you'll see that your gauge, you've decreased the pressure, or the inside the or the how much the gun is regulating. And you'll see that you shoot it and it may say 120, you shoot it again, it may say 115, then you shoot it a third time, it may say 105, and then it may stay there. So it may take 2 or 3 shots for you to bleed off the plenum before you're going to get what the new speed will be with the new plenum setting or regulator setting. Okay, so sorry, I know this is really wordy, but I want you guys to kind of understand how the system works. So just remember, when you go down slow, you can go up kind of quick, and of course you'll see immediate result. So let's go ahead and take the cup out and see what's inside there. We can use the outer ring pliers to take the cup out too. There might be some Loctite here, so this may be a little tough. So just go slow, make sure that you don't mar anything up. So now that we have the cup out, there's a little 1 by 12 by 1.5 O-ring on the bottom here. That O-ring looks fine. And then inside is a secondary little small piston valve, which sits on a ball and a spring right here. So we're going to go ahead and take this guy out too. Okay, so what you're going to have in the bottom of this little piston here is a 4x1 O-ring on a Delrin seal, a 2mm ball, same as the ball that sits underneath the valve on the Leshiy, and a small little spring. Now, putting it back together is going to require a little bit of skill. So I don't know that I necessarily want you guys taking this apart, but if you do, I'm just showing you how to do it. Ed had a video, so this is not my idea. I stole it from him. Basically, I made a tool off of an old valve, drilled out a little place there so that I can put it in, and I'll show you why you need that. So the first step is going to be, so you can see the little hash marks here. It looks like it would be for a screwdriver. That's going to sit up, so that's going to face you, and this part's going to be down. So we're going to do everything backwards when we go to put it back in. So it's going to go the ball first, then the spring, and then I'm going to turn it upside down so that it doesn't fall out when I turn it in, and I'll show you. So there. So I got my little spring in there, and I got my ball. Remember, the ball, this part is going to, this little plunger is going to ride in that ball, and so that's going to be where the spring action does when the piston moves up and down as it regulates. Okay, so it's important that everything is in there. So you take your little cup holder here, if you will, turn it upside down, find your part, put it in, and you can use your finger to seal it, and you'll feel the O-ring slide in, and it should fit nice and flush like that. All right, you guys see that? So basically everything was upside down. The T-bar or T cut out for the what looks like a screwdriver is facing up. That's going to go into your cup. Ball in first, then spring, turn it upside down, push it in here, seat it with your finger. Okay, now you're done. Now next step is going to be to replace the cup. Let's make sure that the O-ring is good behind here. That's a 12 by 1.5. and that your threads are nice and clean. You can use a little tiny bit of grease. A good customer of mine gave me this stuff. It's really good. Complex 825. It's my new favorite O-ring grease. Just remember that we're trying to use this on areas that get a lot of movement so that they don't bind. So we're going to put our cup in here. Make sure not to cross thread. Just go nice and slow. Okay, so now that we got the cup in there, the next step is going to be to replace the O-ring. Okay, so remember that they're going to be stacked on, and we want these to have a little tiny bit of lubricant on them. So let's line them up so we know which ones are which. Remember, there's a beveled side, and you can see in the video, maybe it shows a little bit better on white that they're beveled. We're going to put these together in pairs. So this is going to go in like that. And we're just going to put a little tiny bit of grease on my glove here, and we're going to roll all of these guys in just a little tiny bit of silicone grease, something nice and clean, so that they're lubricated when they have their spring action. They don't get stuck. So we're going to put the cups together like this, bevel to bevel, like a little C-clamp, and then that pair is going to go on your piston. All right, you'll know you have it right because the pairs kind of get separated like that. Now you're going to take it and you want to seat your piston manually with your finger, like that. All right, now that that's seated manually, we're going to put our adjustment ring on there, and we're going to go hand tight, and then I'm going to have you guys do at least, once you get it all the way bottomed out and hand tight, I'm going to have you guys do at least a half a turn until I start to feel some spring tension. Right there. All right, so now that I have some spring tension and I got this back together, let's go ahead and put this on a gun, and I'll put a gauge on here and let's see what it's set at. All right, so guys, this is the second one I've got, and I'm glad I checked it before we put this on a gun, where the Delrin has been smashed. Guys, you do not need to tighten the gauge down when you put it on here extremely tight. It's not what seals it. This isn't like plumbing. What we want is we want the O-ring or the Delrin seat to touch this and seal it. I know I did this a video already, but I'm gonna describe it again since this is the second one that has been completely destroyed. If you destroy it, a 5 by 2.5 O-ring will seal this in here. You just have to make sure that it's completely seated at the very bottom. And nice and flat before you screw your gauge in here. Now, if you watch and see how I do it, no tools, just hand tight. Okay, I don't need to take a wrench to this and squish it all the way to the bottom. It's not going to seal it. If you don't have it sealed, you don't have the Delrin in here correctly. All right, let's go ahead and put this on a buttstock and see what its pressure is set at. All right, so before we go to pressure it up, we want to make sure that our cup is all the way flush. If you notice in the video when I cut it off, it wasn't. And that's because I was looking through my phone at the time and I see it was flush all the way. So make sure your brass cup is below the plenum wall here. And we can go ahead and, as I showed you, you can see here, this is just hand tight, guys. Not very tight at all. And you'll see that it seals just fine like that. All right, so let's gas it up. Turn on our gauge here. Hopefully you can see it. There we go. Kill some of the light, and let's gas her up and see where we're at. You can see it's not leaking. No reason to use a wrench. I'm going to keep saying it over and over again so you guys don't keep smashing these things on me. I might have turned this a little bit much. That's okay. Okay, so we're right at 182. Now, if you have a digital gauge in here, what you'll see is when it stops, usually it'll give a hard stop like this, like 182, and it might fluctuate up and down a little tiny bit. So let's go ahead and drop the reg pressure a little bit. And I'm going to do that by, since I don't have a gun here, I'm going to do it by degassing it a little bit. So let's get a wrench. And we're going to simulate a shot here. We're going to go up a little bit here and take a little glare off for you. So we're going to simulate a shot here. See, it goes right back. So it's regulating, but what I want to do is I want to decrease the reg pressure a little bit. So I am going to take this and go counterclockwise, just about a 1/16 of a turn, I think. We're going to see where we're at. All right, so that's about as much I want to do. Let's gas it up. Remember what I told you. This is not going to change. I think we had 175 in here, 180. It's not going to change because my regulator pressure is still going to be the same. So I am going to leave this air connected, and I'm going to simulate a couple shots here with my wrench. Now I got my gas hooked up, so it's still flowing through here. And I'm just simulating a couple shots and seeing where it's regulating at. And I'm going to say, you know what? I want it a little bit lower, so I dropped it about 30 bar by doing a quarter turn. So I'm going to drop it a little tiny bit more. So keep you guys in focus here. I'm going to try that. Remember, we're going to go down really slow. Gas is still hooked up, so we're going to simulate a shot by opening our bleed screw. Turn this way so you can see. And we're right about 138. Okay, so it's regulating at 138. So let's go down a little tiny bit more. So we're going to go down another 1/16 of a turn probably. Gas is still hooked up, so we're going to simulate a shot with the bleed screw. Okay, that's right where I want to be, 130. Okay, so I'm happy with that setting. So we'll just go ahead and make sure this is tight. We can turn off our air, bleed our hose, take this off. You could leave this on there if you want. I don't like the look of it, so I'm going to degas this and take this off and put my plug back on. And now I know where this is set at 130. All right, so if you guys, hopefully that helps you understand a little bit how the system works, why this is so important, why this is so cool. You can see it's super adjustable down and really easy to use. And, you know, you can cover it back up with a little dress so you don't see what's underneath. All right, so as always, if you guys have any questions, hit me up at sales@edgunwest, and you can go to my website and see the new REPR external plenum and regulator for sale there, and also all the new guns we have at Edgun West are REPR models. They have the adjustable regulator and system. All right, so thanks for watching. Sorry guys, this one was a long one, but there was a lot to cover. I hope it wasn't too boring. I'll see you on the next video. Thanks.